Welcome to Basta Stories, where real-life horror and true ghost stories come to life, from haunted forests to chilling encounters with the darkest parts of human nature. Each episode dives into the terrifying and unexplained. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and ask yourself, are you really alone? My heart thudded as I stepped into the Catskills, a place I'd never dared to venture before. At 28, a father to a little girl who'd just started calling me Dada. I'd somehow dodged every chance to sleep under the stars. No camping trips, no roughing it in the wilderness, nothing. But Caleb, my old friend with a grin too wide for his face, wasn't about to let that slide. He was the kind of guy who'd wear a camo hat unironically, who'd spent his National Guard weekends wrestling with tents and campfire recipes. When he found out I'd never camped, his eyes lit up like I'd confessed to never tasting pizza. "We're fixing that," he said, his voice brimming with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "The Catskills, man, that's where we're going. Wild, raw, and close enough to Buffalo to get there in a day." We packed light, just the essentials, a couple of sleeping bags, a cooler of food, and Caleb's beat-up truck that groaned like it resented every mile. The drive was a blur of asphalt and pine, the kind of road that makes you feel like you're leaving the world behind. By the time we reached the trailhead, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple. We hiked a couple of miles into the forest, our boots crunching on pine needles, until we found a clearing that felt like it was waiting for us. Tall pines and maples stood like silent sentinels, their branches weaving a canopy that filtered the fading light. A stream murmured nearby, its water catching the last glints of daylight, promising us a fresh supply. This was it, our slice of the wild, a place where I could prove I wasn't just a city guy playing pretend. Caleb took charge of the tents, his hands moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. I busied myself gathering firewood, feeling a strange pride in the act. Each stick I picked up felt like a small victory, a step toward the building something real out here. I'd always been a bit of a firebug as a kid, sneaking matches to light tiny bonfires in the backyard until my mom caught me. Now, watching the flames catch and grow, I felt that old thrill again. The fire crackled, its warmth pushing back the evening chill, and Caleb showed off his guard-honed skills with something he called pudgy pies. Picture this: peanut butter and marshmallow fluff, slathered thick between slices of slightly stale bread, toasted over the flames until it was a gooey, golden mess. Out here, with the night closing in and the air sharp with pine. It tasted like heaven. Bite into it, and you'd swear nothing could go wrong in a place this perfect. But perfection doesn't last. As we ate, the fire began to dwindle, its light shrinking against the encroaching dark. We needed more wood. I volunteered, partly because Caleb had paid for the food, partly because I wanted to feel useful, grabbing my flashlight. I stepped away from the fire's glow, the beam cutting a narrow path through the trees. The clearing we'd chosen was picked clean, so I ventured deeper, the forest swallowing me whole. The air grew colder, heavier, like it was pressing down on my shoulders. I stacked branches in my arms, their rough bark scraping my skin, and tried to ignore the way the darkness seemed to watch me. Keep moving. Don't think too hard. Just grab the wood and get back. But then, a sound stopped me cold. A rustling, deliberate, like something was stalking just beyond the light. My breath caught as the rustling grew louder, a steady rhythm that didn't belong to the wind. I froze, my flashlight beam trembling as I swept it through the trees. Shadows danced, twisting into shapes that made my pulse hammer. A deer, maybe? A fox? But the sound was too heavy, too purposeful. Don't just stand there, move. Call out. Do something. I shouted back toward the camp, my voice sharper than I meant. Caleb, you hear that? Something's out here. His reply came quick, calm, almost amused. It's the woods, man. Of course there's something out there. Probably just a critter, more scared of you than you are of it. His words should have steadied me, but they didn't. The forest felt alive, its silence now a lie, hiding something I couldn't see. I gathered a few more branches, my hands shaking as I clutched them, and hurried back to the fire. Caleb was sprawled in his camping chair, the flames casting flickering shadows across his face. He cracked open a soda, handed me one, and we sat there, watching the fire like it was our only shield against the night. The cold drink burned my throat, grounding me for a moment, but the unease lingered, coiling tighter in my gut. You're safe here, with the fire, with Caleb. Nothing's going to happen. But then, not 15 minutes later, another sound sliced through the quiet, closer this time, just beyond the edge of our clearing. We both went still, heads turning toward the noise. It wasn't a rustle now. It was heavier, like footsteps crunching on leaves. Caleb's face hardened, his easy grin gone. He stood, his voice cutting through the dark. "Hey, there's nothing for you out there. Keep moving." His tone was so sure, so commanding. I half expected the forest itself to obey. For a moment, it seemed to work. The footsteps retreated, fading into the distance, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. See? Just some animal, spooked by Caleb's voice. "You're fine." But when I glanced at him, his eyes were wide, his jaw tight. He wasn't relieved. He was scared. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His answer sent a chill racing down my spine. That wasn't an animal. That was a person. He explained, his voice low, how the rhythm of the steps was all wrong for a four-legged creature. 2 legs, steady and deliberate, like someone pacing just out of sight, a person. Out here, in the middle of nowhere? My mind reeled, picturing some stranger watching us, hidden in the dark. Caleb didn't hesitate. He crossed to his pack, pulled out a small gun case, and loaded his pistol with a practiced calm that did nothing to ease my nerves. "We're taking a walk," he said, tucking the gun into his jacket. "Gotta make sure we're clear." Walking through the woods with an armed Caleb was surreal, like stepping into a movie I didn't sign up for. He moved with purpose, his flashlight sweeping the ground, while I trailed behind, my heart pounding so loud I swore it echoed. The trees loomed taller now, their branches clawing at the sky. Every shadow felt like a threat, every snap of a twig a warning. Stay sharp. Keep your eyes open. Don't let your guard down. We circled the clearing, Caleb calling out into the dark, his voice steady but firm. "Hey, whoever's out there, we just want to talk." No answer came. Only the oppressive silence of the forest, thick with secrets. When we finally returned to camp, satisfied the area was clear, Caleb tried to lighten the mood with some campfire pizza, but the tension clung to us like damp air. Sleep was impossible when the forest started screaming. We'd climbed into our tents after a few beers, the fire reduced to glowing embers. My sleeping pad did little to soften the hard ground, the pine needles beneath flattening under my weight. I lay there, staring at the tent ceiling, every nerve on edge. The sounds started small, rustles, snaps, the kind of noises you tell yourself are normal in the wild. But they grew louder, closer, until I couldn't pretend anymore. Something's out there. And it's not just the wind. I strained to hear Caleb, hoping he'd be awake. But his soft snores carried through the thin fabric of his tent. If he could sleep, maybe it was fine. Maybe I was just paranoid. Then it came. A sound that ripped through the night like a knife. A cry. Faint, but unmistakable. Like a baby in pain. It was distant. Somewhere deep in the forest. But it hit me like a physical blow. My heart raced. My skin prickling with a primal urge to act. Make it stop. Find it. Help it. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe an animal. A fox or a coyote. Mimicking a human cry. But when it came again, sharper, more desperate, I knew it wasn't natural. It was too human, too raw, like a child lost and terrified. I sat up, my hands fumbling for my boots, my breath shallow. A third cry followed, closer now, a high-pitched sob that rose and fell, tugging at something deep inside me. I unzipped my tent and stumbled toward Caleb's, the cold air biting at my face. He was already stirring, woken by my footsteps. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice groggy but alert. I held a finger to my lips, whispering, "Listen." The cry came again, slicing through the silence, and Caleb's eyes widened, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. "That's a kid out there," I said, my voice shaking. "We have to help." But Caleb shook his head, his face pale in the moonlight. "Listen closer. That's no kid." I didn't understand until the cry came again. And this time, I caught it. A hollow, unnatural edge, like a recording played on a loop. It's not real. It's a trick. But who would do this? Another cry joined it, from the opposite direction. Then a treaty, a fourth, until the forest was alive with the wails of phantom infants. The sounds overlapped, growing louder, closer, as if the trees themselves were screaming, "Run! Get out! Don't stay here!" Caleb crawled out of his tent, gun in hand, and shouted into the night, his voice steady but laced with fear. "We hear you. We'll leave at first light." But the cries didn't stop. They grew louder. A relentless chorus that clawed at my sanity. We didn't wait for dawn. Caleb grabbed his pack, his gun still in hand, and I scrambled to gather what I could in the dark. Don't use the flashlight. Don't make it easy for them. We moved through the trees, the cries echoing around us, a suffocating wall of sound. Every step felt like a gamble, every shadow a threat. My heart pounded, my lungs burning as we pushed toward the trailhead, the truck, our only hope of escape. The diner's neon sign flickered like a beacon in the dark, promising safety we weren't sure we deserved. We'd made it to Caleb's truck, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the door. The engine roared to life, and we tore down the dirt road, the forest blurring past like a nightmare we couldn't shake. We didn't speak, the silence between us heavy with what we'd heard. The cries had stopped as suddenly as they'd started, but their echo lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of how close we'd come to something we didn't understand. We pulled into the diner's lot, the only cars a delivery truck and a rusted sedan. It was as safe a place as any to wait out the night. Neither of us could face going back to collect our gear in the dark. We sat in the truck, the windows fogging with our breath, until the diner opened at 6. Inside, we hunched over plates of eggs and bacon, our voices low as we pieced together what had happened. Someone wanted us gone, wanted our stuff, and they'd used those cries to do it. It was the only explanation that made sense, but it didn't make the fear go away. I scanned the faces of the early morning truckers, wondering if they knew, if they'd heard those cries before. Caleb said it was better we left, better we avoided a fight that could have landed us in worse trouble. When the sun was up, we drove back to the campsite, the daylight doing little to ease the dread in my chest. The clearing was a wreck. My tent was torn apart, the poles gone, the fabric left in a heap. Caleb's tent, the expensive one he'd bragged about, was missing entirely. Our food, our beer, everything of value, stolen. They'd won, whoever they were, and we'd run like cowards. We gathered what was left, rolled it into the remains of my tent, and hiked back to the truck. The drive home was silent, the weight of the night pressing down on us. That trip became a story we told around other campfires, with other friends, in safer places. But the Catskills, we never went back. Those cries, those footsteps, they're still out there, waiting for the next fool to wander too far. And every time I close my eyes, I hear them again, a reminder that the wild doesn't care who you are. It takes what it wants. The Catskills were a labyrinth of shadows, their towering pines swallowing the last rays of dusk as Gemma and I drove deeper into their embrace. 10 miles from Tannersville, Our car betrayed us, its engine choking into silence like a dying animal. I stepped onto the gravel, the air thick with the scent of pine and decay, and felt it, a presence, unseen but suffocating, watching from the forest's edge. A flicker of movement darted between the trees, too swift to be certain, but it rooted me to the spot, my heart pounding like a drum in the stillness. This weekend was our escape, a rare chance to trade Buffalo's relentless noise for the quiet of a Catskills cabin. The website had painted a dream, log walls polished to a warm glow, a stone fireplace promising cozy nights, a porch overlooking a sea of green. Gemma's eyes had lit up at the thought, her smile bright as she planned our meals, her voice soft with anticipation. I packed light, just enough for 2 nights, but slipped my Sig Sauer into the duffel bag, its cold weight a precaution against bears I'd never seen. Overkill? Gemma teased, her laughter echoing as we left the city behind, the road winding through valleys where mist clung to the earth like a ghostly shroud. We sang to an old rock playlist, her hand warm in mine, the world feeling right for once. But 10 miles from Tannersville, the dashboard flickered, its lights fading to black. I turned the key. Each attempt met with a weak sputter. Then nothing. The forest seemed to lean closer, its silence heavier than the dead engine. And I swore I saw another shadow flit through the pines, gone before I could blink. No cell signal, no help. We grabbed our bags, the gravel biting into our boots, and started walking, the air sharp with cold and the scent of damp earth. Gemma clung to my arm, her breath visible in the fading light, her eyes scanning the tree line with a mix of curiosity and unease. The road stretched endlessly, each step echoing in the oppressive quiet. My mind raced, replaying every horror story I'd heard about the wilderness. Lost hikers, rogue animals, things that didn't belong in civilized tales. Gemma's voice broke the silence, light but strained, suggesting we'd find help soon after 2 miles. A faint glow pierced the darkness. A small auto shop, its neon sign flickering like a dying star. The building was a relic, its windows smeared with grime, the air inside thick with oil and neglect. We pushed open the door, our greeting too cheerful for the eerie stillness. A man emerged from the back, his face etched with lines, deep as the mountain ridges, his eyes cold and unyielding. In his 50s or 60s, he moved with a deliberate slowness, sizing us up like prey. He promised to tow and fix the car by morning, his voice a low rumble that carried an edge I couldn't place. As I paid, I mentioned our cabin rental, expecting a nod or a grunt. His pen froze, his gaze locking onto mine with a weight that made my stomach twist. "You don't know this place, do you?" he said, each word sharp as a blade. He spoke of locals who despised the cabins, outsiders carving their land for profit, cheap for a reason, he said, his laugh bitter, like the wind through barren branches. "They'll make sure you know you're not welcome," Gemma scoffed later, whispering that he was just a cranky old man, jealous of our fancy rental. But his words sank into me, heavy as the cig in my bag. "Stay near the cabin. Don't wander. If anything feels wrong, run." He asked if I was armed, and I nodded, mentioning the cig. "Keep it close," he said, his eyes darkening. "You'll need it." His friend drove us to the cabin, his pickup rattling through a forest that seemed to close in around us. The road twisted, trees looming like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. Gemma's skepticism clashed with my growing unease, her hand gripping mine as the driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, watching for something I couldn't see. The cabin was everything we'd dreamed. Polished wood floors, a plush sofa, windows framing a forest, alive with cricket hums and owl calls. We walked the perimeter, pine needles soft underfoot, the air clean and sharp. No figures lurked, no strange markings scarred the trees. But as I scanned the tree line, a prickle crawled up my neck, like eyes boring into me from the dark. We cooked dinner, the cabin's warmth easing our nerves. I checked the cig, its weight grounding me. We'd be fine, I told myself, as we drifted to sleep. The forest's chorus wrapping us in a fragile peace. The cabin felt like a sanctuary, its walls a barrier against the mechanic's grim warnings. Gemma moved with ease, unpacking our bags, her laughter filling the space as she chopped vegetables for dinner. The scent of garlic and herbs mingled with the faint pine aroma seeping through the windows. We ate by candlelight, the flicker casting soft shadows on the wood, our wine glasses clinking in a toast to escape. Gemma's eyes sparkled, her earlier doubts about the mechanic fading as she spoke of hiking trails and stargazing. I wanted to believe her, to sink into the warmth of this moment. But his words echoed in my mind. "They don't take kindly to folks like you." I pushed the thought away,
focusing on Gemma's voice, the way her fingers brushed mine. The forest outside was alive, its sounds a symphony of crickets, owls, and distant rustles that felt more exciting than ominous. I checked the locks, the cig resting on the nightstand, its presence a quiet reassurance. We climbed into bed, the mattress soft, the blankets heavy with the scent of cedar. Sleep came easily, the forest's hum lulling us into a false sense of security. Morning broke with sunlight spilling through the pines, painting the porch in golden hues. Gemma and I sat with coffee, the mugs warm in our hands, laughing at our fears from the day before. The woods were serene, a tapestry of green and amber, the air alive with birdsong and the faint buzz of insects. The mechanic's warning seemed absurd now. A ghost story for gullible city folk. We planned our day, a short hike, maybe a picnic by a stream, our voices light, the tension of the previous night melting away. The forest stretched before us, inviting, its beauty almost too perfect. But as I sipped my coffee, my eyes caught something, a branch, high in a tree, sliced clean and dangling like a fractured bone. My pulse quickened. I set my mug down, the warmth fading from my hands. Gemma noticed my shift, her smile faltering. "What's wrong?" she asked, following my gaze. I didn't answer, my feet already moving toward the tree. The forest's calm now, a lie I couldn't trust. I approached the tree, Gemma close behind, her breath uneven. The branch was cut, deliberate and precise, its severed edge glinting in the morning light. Below it, a heavy log was wedged against the trunk, held by a stick woven through the branches. A thin wire ran from the log, vanishing into the underbrush like a snake slithering into hiding. I followed its path, my heart thudding, my breath shallow in the crisp air. The wire emerged again, stretched taut across a faint trail, barely visible against the dirt. A tripwire, rigged to kill. My stomach lurched. I grabbed a stick and tossed it at the wire, my hands trembling. The log crashed down, shaking the earth, dust rising like a specter. Gemma's face drained of color, her eyes wide with horror. If I'd stepped forward, that log would have crushed me. My bones splintered on the forest floor. Her hand flew to her mouth, a silent scream trapped in her throat. I pulled her close, my own fear mirrored in her eyes. This wasn't a natural hazard. Someone had built this, someone who wanted us gone, or worse. We searched the area, our steps cautious, eyes darting to every shadow. The forest, once inviting, now felt like a predator's lair, its beauty a mask for something sinister. A pile of stones, stacked too neatly to be natural, sat near the cabin, their arrangement deliberate, like a marker left by unseen hands. A tattered red cloth hung from a branch, fluttering in the breeze, its faded hue stark against the green. Each discovery tightened the knot in my chest, a primal fear clawing at me. Every rustle felt like footsteps, every shadow a figure closing in. Gemma's voice trembled as she pointed out more signs. A faint trail of disturbed earth, a broken twig arranged too perfectly. We moved slowly, the cig now in my hand, its weight no longer comforting, but a grim necessity. The forest sounds, birds, wind, distant streams felt mocking, a chorus hiding the truth. I remembered the mechanic's warning, his voice echoing, "If anything feels wrong, run." This was wrong, every inch of it. We circled the cabin, finding more markers, another pile of stones, another cloth, each one a silent threat. The air grew heavier, the sunlight dimming as clouds rolled in, casting the forest in a gray haze. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Locals scaring tourists for kicks. But the precision of the trap, the weight of that log, told a different story. This was meant to harm, to kill. Gemma's skepticism was gone, replaced by a fear that mirrored my own. We stood frozen, the cabin behind us no longer a sanctuary, but a target. What if they're watching us now? The thought sent a chill through me, my eyes scanning the tree line for movement. I imagined them out there, faceless figures, their hatred carved into traps meant to maim. Gemma grabbed my arm, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to leave. Now." I nodded, my throat tight. The cig gripped so hard, my knuckles ached. We hurried back to the cabin, the forest's beauty now a cruel deception, its every sound a potential threat. We packed in a frenzy, the cabin's warmth now suffocating, clothes, food. Our few belongings were shoved into bags, the air crackling with our shared panic. The forest outside was no longer a haven, but a labyrinth of threats. Its trees hiding eyes we couldn't see. Every rustle felt like a footstep. Every flicker of light a signal they were near. We locked the door, the sound hollow, useless against whatever waited outside. The highway was our lifeline, a straight shot to the auto shop. But the walk felt like a descent into a nightmare. My hand hovered over the cig, my eyes scanning the trees, expecting movement at every turn. Gemma clung to my side, her breath ragged, her eyes wide with a fear I'd never seen in her. The forest pressed in, its branches clawing at the sky, its silence louder than any scream. Each step on the gravel sent my pulse racing, my mind conjuring images of traps hidden in the underbrush, of figures lurking just out of sight. The journey stretched endlessly. The highway, a faint hope in the distance. I kept the cig ready, my finger off the trigger, but itching to act. Gemma's voice broke the silence, low and urgent, asking if I thought they were following us. I didn't know, but the weight of unseen eyes was unbearable. We moved faster, the gravel crunching underfoot, the air heavy with the scent of pine and fear. When we reached the shop, the mechanic was there, his face hardening as we spilled our story. The trap, the stones, the cloth. He nodded, unsurprised, his voice heavy with regret. Folks up there don't play, he said, his eyes flickering with something like guilt. He'd heard of such traps, though never this bold, this close to the cabins. He offered a refund, a gesture we waved off, but his expression told me he knew how close we'd come to disaster. We took our keys, climbed into the car, and drove away, the Catskills shrinking in the rearview mirror. That forest, with its hidden traps and unseen watchers, still haunts my dreams. We swore we'd never return, and we haven't. Some places belong to those who guard them with blood, and we were fools to think we could trespass. As we drove, the forest's shadow lingered, a weight I couldn't shake. I kept checking the mirror, half expecting to see a figure standing on the road, a tattered cloth in hand. Gemma was quiet, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the horizon. We didn't speak of it, but the truth hung between us. We'd escaped something we didn't fully understand, something that felt older, darker than the mountains themselves. The mechanic's warning had been no ghost story. It was a truth carved into the land, into the traps left for outsiders like us. 20 years ago, I stood at the edge of Platte Clove Valley, where the Catskills' jagged peaks and shadowed pines seemed to guard secrets older than time itself. The air was sharp, biting through my worn jacket. carrying the damp scent of earth and decay that clung to my skin like a second shadow. I was 60, retired. My days stretching endlessly like the muddy trails before me, haunted by a restless need to do something, anything, worthwhile. A 6-year-old boy had vanished, last seen chasing a stray dog into these woods, clutching a small blue toy car. Feel the weight of that absence now, the way it presses against your chest, urging you to step into the dark. I joined 50 strangers, united by a desperate hope. Our flashlights slicing through the dawn's gray mist like fragile lifelines. The police had briefed us at first light. The boy had been gone for nearly a day, his small frame swallowed by the forest's vastness. Every second felt like a theft from his chances. The valley was a labyrinth of pine and shadow, its air thick with the scent of wet earth, pine needles, and something older, unnameable. My boots sank into the mud, each step a battle against the cold that numbed my fingers and the ache in my spine that had settled in years ago. Listen to the silence now. It's louder than our shouts, swallowing them whole. We spread out in a ragged Corriere della Sera line, calling the boy's name, his name. A fragile syllable we hurled into the void, hoping it would find him. The sound echoed off the trees, only to be devoured by the forest's indifference. By noon, a cold drizzle began, soaking my jacket, blurring my vision, and turning the ground into a slick, treacherous maze. A dozen volunteers left, their faces pale with defeat, their boots heavy with mud. But I stayed. You'd stay too, wouldn't you? For a child lost in this endless dark. The group was a patchwork of hope and exhaustion. Some shouted until their voices cracked, raw with desperation. Others trudged in silence, their eyes hollow, reflecting the weight of hours without a sign. I wanted to believe we were all good people, driven by the same need to save a life. But then I saw him, the man in the green jacket. He lingered at the group's edge, a shadow among shadows, his faded green hood pulled low, obscuring his face. His movements were slow, deliberate, like a predator stalking through the underbrush. Watch him now. See how he moves, like he's hiding something from the light. At first, I told myself he was just cautious, maybe shy, focused on his own search. But his hands stayed buried in his pockets, and he never called the boy's name, not once. That silence gnawed at me, a quiet alarm that grew louder With every step, the forest seemed to watch us, its branches twisting into shapes that flickered in the corner of my eye. Faces, hands, things that weren't there. Feel the forest's gaze now, the way it presses against your skin. My back screamed with every step, the pain a constant reminder of my age, my limits. Yet the thought of that boy, alone, scared, maybe hurt, burned in my chest. A fire that kept me moving. I scanned the underbrush, my flashlight's beam catching glints of water, stone, and shadow. Every rustle made my heart lurch, hoping for a glimpse of a small figure, a flash of color. But there was nothing. No footprints, no scraps of clothing. Just the endless forest and its secrets. The group's energy waned, hope fraying at the edges. You can feel it too, can't you? The way hope slips through your fingers, like water. I tried to focus on the task, on the boy, but the man in the green jacket kept pulling my gaze. He moved like he didn't belong, his steps too careful, his presence too quiet. Why doesn't he call out? What's he hiding? I remembered a story my father told me years ago about a hunter who'd wandered too far into these woods and never came back. The locals said the Catskills kept their own, claiming those who didn't respect their rules. I'd laughed it off then, but now, with the man in the green jacket hovering at the edge of my vision, that story felt like a warning. Step carefully now. The forest is listening. I shook my head, trying to focus. Exhaustion was playing tricks, making me see threats where there were none. But the man's silence, his avoidance of the group's rhythm, planted a seed of doubt that grew with every passing hour. The rain grew heavier, the cold sinking deeper into my bones, and the forest seemed to tighten its grip around us, as if daring us to find what it hid. Night fell, and the valley turned hostile. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky, their shadows twisting into shapes that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. The rain returned, heavier now, turning the ground into a slick trap that threatened to steal my footing. Feel the weight of the dark now, pressing against your chest, urging you to turn back. Our flashlights danced across the darkness, revealing only fragments, twisted roots, glistening rocks, and shadows that flickered like ghosts. My back screamed, my voice raw from calling the boy's name. Each shout, a plea that went unanswered. The man in the green jacket stayed at the edges, his silhouette barely visible, a specter in the mist. I watched him, my suspicion growing like a knot in my gut, tightening with every step. Then I saw it. He was avoiding a specific part of the valley, a rocky ravine choked with brambles and fallen logs. Why won't he go there? What does he know? We'd been told to search every inch of our assigned grids, but he drifted away, circling back to areas already covered, his flashlight never lingering long. I saw him pause once, his beam hovering at the ravine's edge, its light swallowed by the darkness below. Then he turned, his steps quickening, as if the ravine held something he couldn't face. He's hiding something. Can you feel it in your bones? My heart sank, a cold dread settling in, heavier than the rain-soaked air. I tried to shake it off. Exhaustion makes you see things. But when I saw him skirt the ravine again, his movements too deliberate, I knew it wasn't my imagination. I couldn't ignore it. Step into that ravine now. Find what he's afraid of. I broke from the group, my flashlight trembling in my hand as I descended into the ravine. The air grew colder, heavier, like the forest was holding its breath. My beam swept across the ground, catching glints of wet leaves, jagged rocks, and something else, something small, half buried in the dirt. There, in the leaves, a small blue toy car, its wheel bent, its paint scratched. My breath caught, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the forest's silence. It was the boy's toy, the one his parents described, a heartbreaking relic of a child lost. Hold it in your mind now, the weight of that tiny car, the hope it shatters. I didn't touch it. I knew better. I called out, my voice cracking, and a police officer came running, his boots slipping in the mud. The officer's face hardened as I pointed to the toy. See it now, the truth it holds, sharp as a blade. I didn't mention the man in the green jacket. Not yet. The group was fraying, exhaustion and fear tearing at our edges. Accusing someone without proof could break us. But as the officer marked the spot, I saw him, the man in the green jacket, slipping back into the group, his hood still up, his hands deep in his pockets. He's watching you now, his eyes hidden but burning through the dark. I was certain he'd seen the toy, that he'd known it was there and chosen silence. The thought sent a shiver through me, colder than the rain, sharper than the wind. I remembered another story, one whispered by a colleague years ago, about a hiker who found strange markers in these woods, stones stacked unnaturally, cloth tied to branches. He'd laughed it off. But now, with the toy car glinting in my flashlight's beam, those stories felt like truths I'd ignored. The forest keeps its secrets. Can you feel them watching? I scanned the ravine, half expecting to see more signs. A footprint, a torn scrap of clothing, but there was only the toy, small and broken. A silent scream in the dark. My hands shook as I stepped back. The officer's radio crackling with static, calling for backup. The group gathered, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mix of hope and dread. But the man in the green jacket stayed at the edge, his silence louder than any shout. The ravine seemed to pulse with a secret, its shadows whispering truths I couldn't grasp. I couldn't stay silent. Speak now. Don't let him slip away into the dark. I pulled the officer aside, my voice low, trembling with urgency. I told him everything. The man's avoidance of the ravine, his silence, the way he moved like he was hiding something. The officer nodded, his face unreadable, and said he'd talk to his team, feel the relief. But only for a moment. It's not enough. I expected nothing to happen. After all, I was just an old man, half crazed from exhaustion. But later, I saw two officers approach the man in the green jacket. They stepped away, their voices hushed, swallowed by the forest's hum. His shoulders stiffened, his hands gesturing sharply, defensive. He's hiding something. Can you see it in his posture, the way he turns away? Then he turned and vanished into the dark, his silhouette merging with the trees. By 1 a.m., my body was done, screaming for rest. I asked the officer what happened. He said the man denied everything, took offense at being questioned, and left the search in a huff. They'd noted his name from his ID, but without evidence. He was free to go. Feel the frustration now, the way it claws at your chest. Unanswered. I walked back to my car, the forest pressing in. Every shadow a reminder of the man in the green jacket. The next day, I returned. But the group was different, silent, broken, their smiles empty, their eyes hollow. The man never came back. But his absence screamed louder than his presence. He's out there still, carrying his secrets into the dark. I never learned the boy's fate, or what the man knew. Carry that mystery with you. It will haunt you forever. I lie awake at night, seeing that toy car in the leaves, the man's hooded figure fading into the trees. The Catskills hold their secrets tight, buried in ravines too deep to search. And some truths are lost to the shadows forever. The forest whispered promises of peace, but its shadows held secrets I wasn't ready for. My name is Rachel, a New Yorker with a heart tethered to the wild. In my early 20s, I'd carved out my freedom on the trails of Pennsylvania, where college stress melted under the rhythm of my boots against earth. Hiking was more than exercise. It was my sanctuary, a place where the world's noise faded, leaving only the pulse of my breath and the crunch of leaves. Solitude was my drug, the kind that made me feel alive, untouchable. But in November 2017, I chose Blackthorn Ridge in the Catskills for my first solo hike in my home state, craving that same rush in a place I'd never explored. This would be my last time chasing solitude, and the forest would make sure I never forgot why. I'd always sought the paths less traveled, where the air felt untouched, where the forest spoke only to me. Blackthorn Ridge promised that, a winding trail through pines and maples, their branches heavy with the last colors of autumn. The morning was crisp, the air sharp with the scent of damp earth, pine resin, and the faint sweetness of decaying leaves. My pack sat snug against my shoulders, loaded with water, snacks, and a map I'd marked with 5 checkpoints for an oval loop up the ridge and back. Each step sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, a reminder that I was exactly where I belonged. The sun filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns that danced across the trail. And I felt invincible, like the forest was an extension of my own heartbeat. Keep moving, Rachel. Let the wild carry you. The trail climbed gently, the ground soft with pine needles, the occasional root twisting underfoot like a reminder of the earth's untamed nature. Birds chirped overhead, their songs weaving through the rustle of leaves, and squirrels darted through the underbrush, their tiny claws scratching the earth. I breathed it all in, the scents and sounds overloading my senses in the best way, grounding me in the moment. I'd always loved this feeling, the world reduced to the trail ahead, the weight of my pack, the rhythm of my steps. In college, I'd hiked alone for the first time, a short trail in Pennsylvania that left me hooked, the solitude a revelation after years of city chaos. This is why you're here, Rachel, to feel that freedom again. Then, something broke the spell, nestled at the base of a gnarled pine, half buried in a blanket of leaves and dirt. was a small, leather-bound object. It didn't belong here. A human artifact in a world of bark and soil. My curiosity, that relentless spark that had led me down countless trails, pulled me closer. I knelt, my knees sinking into the cool earth, and brushed away the grime to reveal a notebook, its cover worn but resilient, as if it had endured seasons of neglect. Opening it felt wrong, like peering into someone's soul, but the pages spoke of hiking, of Blackthorn Ridge, of the same thrill I felt standing here. The writer was a solo hiker, their words alive with the joy of solitude, the beauty of the Catskills, the rush of their first time here. We're the same, this stranger and I, chasing the same escape. A note inside read, "If lost, please return to X," with a name and address. I tucked the journal into my jacket, promising myself I'd mail it back when I got home. For now, it was a companion, a piece of someone else's story to carry with me. I hiked on, the ridge rising before me, each step building a rhythm that synced with my heartbeat. The forest's scents and sights overwhelmed me. The sharp tang of pine, the soft filter of light through branches, the flutter of a bird taking flight. I thought of a friend from college, Sarah, who'd found a lost scarf on a trail and tracked down its owner, sparking a friendship over shared stories. Maybe this journal would lead to something similar, a connection born from the wild. But as I pushed deeper into the ridge, the journal in my pocket felt heavier, like it carried a weight I hadn't yet understood. Hunger eventually stopped me at a cluster of flat rocks, perfect for a break. I sat cross-legged, sipping water and tearing into trail mix, and pulled out the journal again. That's when everything changed. The journal's words turned from poetry to panic, a warning that sank into my bones. I'd expected more tales of adventure, but the handwriting shifted. Neat lines gave way to jagged scrawls, as if the writer's hand trembled with every stroke. No birds, no critters, dead quiet. The words were clipped, urgent, like a scream trapped on paper. "Predator in area," they wrote, the question mark heavy with dread. What did they see? Rachel? What made them write like this? I looked up, my eyes scanning the trees, searching for the silence they described. But the forest was alive. Birds sang. Leaves rustled. A squirrel skittered across a branch. "You're fine. Rachel, this is their fear. not yours. Still, my pulse quickened, a cold unease creeping up my spine like a draft through an open window. The final entry was worse. It named Hollow Crag, a rocky clearing beyond a meadow, where the ground sank into a shallow basin. The words were scratched so deeply they nearly tore the page. Warn other hikers, stay away. No explanation, just a raw, desperate plea. Stay away from what? My heart thudded as I checked my map. Hollow Crag was my halfway checkpoint, a place I'd planned to pass through to stay on schedule. Avoiding it meant adding hours to my hike, doubling my time in the woods. Don't be stupid, Rachel. It's just a journal, just words. But the fear in those scratches was real, and it latched onto me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I stood, my legs heavier, and shoved the journal back into my pocket. The trail stretched ahead, its path narrowing as roots twisted underfoot and branches hung low, brushing my face like skeletal fingers. I moved faster, my boots pounding the earth, trying to outrun the dread that clung to me. Every few steps, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone watching from the trees. Keep your eyes open. Don't let your guard down. The forest still sang its song. Birds, wind, the crunch of leaves. But it felt hollow now, like a mask hiding something darker. I remembered a night in Pennsylvania, camping with friends, when we'd heard a strange rustle and laughed it off as a raccoon. But this wasn't a raccoon. This was something else. Something that made a hiker carve a warning into paper. The trail grew rougher, the trees denser, their branches weaving a canopy that blocked the sun. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest, making each breath a conscious effort. I checked my map again, confirming Hollow Crag was close. Too close. I could skirt it, hug the edges, but avoiding it entirely would cost me daylight, energy, and the confidence I'd built over years of hiking. You're stronger than this. Rachel, you've faced worse. But had I? The journal's words burned in my mind, a warning from someone who'd stood exactly where I was, who'd felt the same thrill, until they didn't. I tightened my pack straps, my fingers brushing the leather in my pocket, and pushed forward. Each step a battle between curiosity and fear. Just keep moving. Rachel, don't let the words win. A sharp crack behind me shattered the forest's false calm, and I knew I wasn't alone. It came from maybe 50 yards back. A deliberate sound, like a branch torn from a tree with force. My heart lurched, my breath catching as I froze, listening. Don't look back, Rachel. Just move. I quickened my pace, my boots slipping on the uneven trail, my eyes darting to every shadow. The forest was still alive, birds chirping, leaves rustling. But it felt like a performance now, hiding something sinister. I wanted to turn, to prove it was just my imagination. But fear glued my gaze forward. If you look, you'll see something you can't unsee. The trail curved, the trees thinning as I neared Hollow Crag. The journal had described it perfectly. A wide, shallow basin of rock and sparse grass, exposed under the cold glare of the sun. I didn't want to step into the open, but doubling back meant facing whatever had made that sound. You have no choice, Rachel. Keep going. I entered the clearing, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the forest. The sunlight was harsh, revealing every blade of grass, every jagged rock. My eyes scanned the tree line, catching every flicker, a leaf falling, a squirrel darting. You're alone. You're safe. But I wasn't. I glanced back. Just a fraction. And there he was, a figure stepping from the trees into the sunlight. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of someone who owned this place. His clothes were wrong, tattered, patched together from scraps, like he'd scavenged them from abandoned camps. He's not a hiker. Rachel, run. He stopped when he saw me, his eyes locking onto mine, and I felt it, a heavy, predatory weight, pinning me in place. I clutched my pack straps, my legs moving faster, aiming for the trail on the other side. He didn't stay still. He followed, slipping back into the trees, mirroring my movements like a shadow. Then I saw the second man, to my left, moving parallel through the underbrush. There's two of them. You're trapped. My legs burned, my lungs screaming. But I held back from running. Running would trigger them, like prey sparking a predator's chase. The trail was close, 30 yards, maybe 40. I could make it if I stayed calm. But then a voice, gruff and raw, cut through the air. She's getting away! Run, Rachel. Now. I sprinted, branches tearing at my face, my pack slamming against my back. The forest blurred, my vision narrowing to the trail ahead. I stumbled over a root, catching myself against a tree, my hands scraping raw as I pushed off and kept running. Don't stop. Don't fall. Don't let them catch you. The trail twisted downhill, my feet slipping. But I kept going, driven by a terror I'd never known. The ranger station's green door was a lifeline, but its emptiness mocked my hope. I'd run until the forest thinned, the trees giving way to a gravel path that led to a small wooden building. Its paint chipped but solid. My legs burned, my lungs raw, as I staggered up the steps, pounding on the door with fists that felt like they'd break. No answer. Please, someone, be there. I pushed the door open, my heart sinking as I stepped into an empty room. A desk, a radio, a map of the Catskills pinned to the wall. No ranger, no help. You're not safe yet. Rachel. Lock the door. I turned the bolt, sank to the floor, and pressed my back against the wood. My last defense against the men who'd chased me. Silence settled, heavy and oppressive. I waited, listening for footsteps, for any sign of pursuit. Nothing came. My hands trembled as I pulled the journal from my jacket, its leather warm from my body. I placed it on the desk, a gesture that felt like surrender. I'm done with you. I don't want this anymore. The sun was setting, the light fading through the station's small window. I couldn't go back out there. Not in the dark. Not with them out there. I stayed, curled against the door, my body aching from the chase, my mind replaying every moment. The crack, the figures, the voice. You're safe here. Rachel, just wait for morning. The night was endless, each minute stretching into hours. I didn't sleep, didn't move. My eyes fixed on the window, watching for shadows. I thought of my first solo hike, years ago, when I'd camped alone in Pennsylvania and felt invincible, that Rachel was gone now, replaced by someone who knew fear too well. When dawn broke, pale light creeping through the glass, I forced myself to stand. My legs screamed, my hands raw and bloody from the run. I left the journal on the desk. It wasn't mine anymore. The ranger needed to see it, needed to know what was out there. I stepped outside, the forest eerily quiet, as if it had forgotten the terror of the night before. Get out of here. Rachel, don't look back. The ranger's sigh told me my nightmare was just another day in the Catskills. I followed the gravel path, my steps unsteady but determined, until I heard an engine, a truck, rumbling closer. My first instinct was to run, but the ranger decal stopped me. I waved frantically, tears stinging my eyes as the truck slowed. The ranger, a weathered man with tired eyes, stepped out, his face shifting from alarm to concern as I assured him I was okay. Barely. I spilled everything. The journal, the men, the chase, the terror that had driven me to the station. My voice shook, the words tumbling out, as if saying them would make the fear less real. You're safe now, Rachel. But they need to know. As we drove to the trailhead, the ranger explained. The men at Hollow Crag were known, though not by name. They were wild, living off the grid, hostile to anyone who crossed their territory. Years ago, the rangers had tried to reach out, only to be met with an arrow that narrowly missed one of their heads. They don't want you here, Rachel, and they'll make sure you know it. The trail was technically closed, but the men tore down every sign, rejecting any trace of authority. The ranger guessed it was their hatred for anything official, even cheap plastic signs. I sat there, stunned, the journal's warning now painfully clear. America's wild. Rachel, and not the way you thought. The realization hit like a stone. I'd always seen the city as dangerous, the wilderness as safe, a place to escape. But the Catskills showed me the truth. Out here, some people lived by their own rules, and crossing their path could be deadly. I thought of my college days, hiking with friends, laughing under the stars, oblivious to the dangers beyond the campfire's glow. That innocence was gone. The ranger dropped me at the trailhead. His final words, a warning to stay away. I didn't need to be told twice. You'll never hike alone again, Rachel. Not after this. That trip. That journal. Those men. They broke something in me. The part that craved solitude in the wild. I haven't been back to the Catskills, and I never will. The forest might call, but I'll never answer again. The forest of balsam was a cathedral of shadows, its pines stretching toward a sky bruised with dusk. I'd spent years chasing its secrets, my trail cameras capturing the unseen lives of bears and deer when I wasn't there. That summer, I set 5 cameras near a stream, their lenses trained on the wild. But as I sat in my cabin, reviewing the footage, I saw something that froze my blood. A man, not a beast, clawing at the earth under the moon's pale glow, his eyes glinting like a predator's in the dark. Photography was my obsession, a way to steal moments from the wilderness without disturbing its rhythm. Balsam, deep in the Catskills, was my sanctuary. Its streams and ridges, pinto with life, I'd spent years documenting. That summer, I'd chosen a spot near a gurgling stream, a place where bears wandered under starlight. their paws silent on the moss. I rigged 5 cameras to the trees, their motion sensors primed to snap day or night. The plan was simple. Leave them for a week, retrieve the footage, and sift through for shots worth keeping. I'd done this dozens of times. My cabin, a cluttered shrine of memory cards and prints, bears lumbering through brush, deer grazing in dawn's haze. Each camera was a sentinel, an extension of my eyes, watching when I couldn't. I hiked out that morning, the air sharp with pine and earth, the forest humming with life. The cameras were hidden well, their lenses blending into the bark, invisible to the untrained eye. I felt a quiet thrill, imagining the images I'd find. Maybe a bear's silhouette against the moon, its breath steaming in the night air. But as I secured the last camera, a chill ran through me, like the forest itself was watching, its silence heavier than it should have been. Back at the cabin, I poured coffee and settled at my desk. The hum of my laptop, a comforting contrast to the forest's wild pulse. The first camera's footage was what I'd expected. Bears shuffling through the underbrush, their eyes catching the infrared glow. Deer pausing to drink, their ears twitching at unseen sounds. I smiled, marking frames to save, the familiar rhythm of my work easing the day's tension. Then I loaded the footage from the 5th camera, tucked deeper in the woods, where the stream carved a shadowed path through the pines. The first few clips were normal, squirrels darting, a fox's tail flashing past. But then, at 2:17 a.m., a figure appeared. Not a hiker, not a camper, but a man. His clothes tattered and filthy, moving like something feral. He stumbled into the frame, his hands clawing at the dirt, digging with a frantic, animalistic urgency. His head twitched, his movements jerky, as if driven by some unseen force. He never looked at the camera, oblivious to its gaze, his focus locked on the earth. My mouth went dry, my heart thudding as I leaned closer, the grainy images searing into my mind. Who was he? What was he burying or unearthing in the dead of night? The footage offered no answers, only questions that burrowed into me, sharp and unrelenting. The man's movements haunted me, his twitching head and clawing hands replaying in my mind as I sat frozen at my desk. The cabin's warmth felt stifling now. The forest outside, no longer a sanctuary, but a void hiding something sinister. His eyes, glinting in the infrared, weren't human. They were hollow, like pits carved into his face, staring into nothing. I rewatched the clip, pausing on his silhouette, trying to make sense of it. His clothes hung in rags, stained with dirt and something darker. His frame gaunt, as if the forest had consumed him. He dug with a purpose I couldn't fathom, each scrape of his hands sending a shiver through me. I'd photographed bears, coyotes, even mountain lions. But this was different. This wasn't wildlife. This was something else, something that didn't belong in my orderly world of lenses and frames. I shut the laptop, my hands trembling, the coffee cold in its mug. Sleep was impossible. The man's image burned into my thoughts, his jerky movements a silent warning. He didn't see the camera, I told myself. But the forest saw me, and it wasn't letting go. I decided to retrieve the cameras 2 days early, unable to stomach the thought of leaving them out there with him roaming the woods. The idea of hiking alone made my skin crawl. But I needed those memory cards, needed to know what else they'd captured. At dawn, I packed my gear, my camera bag, heavier with dread than equipment. The trail to the stream was familiar. Its mossy paths and babbling water, once a comfort. Now, every rustle of leaves felt like a footstep. Every snap of a twig, a signal. The air was thick with pine and damp earth, but beneath it lingered something sour, like decay. I found the first camera easily, its lens glinting in the morning light, but the second stopped me cold. Its lens was shattered. The casing cracked, as if struck with a rock. My heart sank, anger mixing with fear. I checked the next one. Same story. Its body smashed, the memory card gone. The third and fourth were no different. Their remains scattered like broken bones, their cards either missing or crushed into the dirt. My hands shook, rage boiling at the thought of someone destroying my work. But it wasn't just vandalism. It was deliberate, personal, a message carved in wreckage. Only the fifth camera, deepest in the woods, was untouched. I hesitated, my breath shallow, the forest's silence pressing against me. Part of me wanted to grab it and run, but I needed to know. I popped out the memory card and slid it into my portable viewer, my fingers clumsy with nerves. The first clips were normal, animals moving through the night, their eyes glowing softly. Then he appeared again. The same man, his tattered clothes unmistakable. But this time, he wasn't digging. He stood inches from the camera, his face filling the frame, pale and gaunt, with dark circles like bruises under his eyes. His lips moved, muttering words the camera couldn't catch. his gaze locked on the lens as if he saw me through it. My blood ran cold, my breath catching in my throat. He knew the camera was there. He wanted me to see him. I shut off the viewer, yanked the camera from the tree, and stuffed it into my bag. My heart pounding so loud it drowned out the forest's hum. I started back toward the trailhead, the 2-mile hike to my car, stretching like an eternity. The forest, once a haven, was now a maze of threats, its trees looming like silent watchers. His face lingered in my mind, those hollow eyes boring through the lens, through me, as if he'd marked me. Every rustle sent my pulse racing, my eyes darting to the shadows, expecting him to emerge, his gaunt frame lurching toward me. The air felt heavier. The scent of pine and decay now laced with something metallic, like blood. I gripped my bag, the camera inside a weight I both needed and feared. Why had he smashed the others, but left this one? Why had he stared into the lens, his lips moving in a silent message? "Leave now," it said, clear as if he'd spoken aloud. I tried to rationalize it, a hermit, spooked by my cameras, lashing out in fear. But those eyes, that deliberate stare, told a different story. He wasn't afraid. He was in control. The forest, his domain, and I was the intruder. The trail seemed to twist, its paths less familiar. The stream's babble, now a mocking whisper. I kept moving, my steps quickening, the weight of his gaze pressing on me. I imagined him out there, hidden among the pines, his hands still crusted with dirt from whatever he'd been digging. Was it a grave? A cache? Something worse? My mind spun. Conjuring tales I'd heard of the Catskills, stories of men who fled society, living like ghosts in the wilderness, guarding secrets no one dared uncover. The mechanic from Tannersville came to mind, his warnings about locals who hated outsiders. Had I stumbled into their territory? My cameras a violation they wouldn't forgive? The thought tightened my chest, my breath coming in short gasps. I clutched the camera bag, its contents a ticking bomb of evidence I couldn't unsee, when the trail opened to the clearing where my car waited. Relief flooded me, but it was fleeting. I glanced back at the tree line, half expecting his gaunt face to stare back, his lips still moving in that silent chant. Nothing, just the forest, its silence louder than ever. I climbed into the car, locked the doors, and drove, the Catskills shrinking in the rearview mirror. That footage, that face, stayed with me, burned into my mind like a brand. I didn't watch the memory card again. Couldn't bear to see those eyes. I packed my gear and left Balsam for good. My work now confined to safer ranges, far from those woods. The bears of Balsam would have to wait. But deep down, I know he's still out there, watching, waiting for the next fool to cross his path. His message etched in my fear. Leave now.